But I make no secret of my fondness for Current Affairs magazine. We've had several of their writers on, and I always appreciate them and it. Nathan J. Robinson, the editor and publisher, was on just a week or two ago, and our next guest has also been on. I've always enjoyed talking to her. Lyta Gold's title at the Current Affairs magazine is Amusements editor, and when I received my first issue of Current Affairs magazine in the mail, I will acknowledge that the the cutout doll feature, Dressed Jeremy Corbyn for Success, was a big hit in our household. And she also writes pieces, normally of the amusements variety, but otherwise pointed and making a point. So without further ado, Lyta Gold, thanks for coming back on the program.
Hi, it's so great to be here. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So let's start with this, to get this out of the way. You and Nathan are the co-editors of a relatively recent book entitled The Current Affairs Big Book of Amusements. So first, just to get this out of the way, what size book is this? Is it medium size, small? What would you say?
I'd say it's the perfect size, but medium-sized book. It's 170-some pages, but it's a large format like the magazine. Actually, everything is the same size. And it's a collection of all the amusements, pretty much all the amusements that we've ever done in the magazine. These amusements are interstitial materials, they're quizzes, they're fake ads, they're jokes. We have no real ads, we only have fake ads in Current Affairs. They are flowcharts, they're crossword puzzles. They're all satire in some way or another, or surreal, but usually pointed political satire. And there's a few fresh ones just for the book, too, that have never been in the magazine before.
So, among other things, these amusements answer the question, did you know the left has no sense of humor? And of course, the right answer to that is no, but if you hum a few bars, I'll fake it. So these amusements include, besides the Jeremy Corbyn paper doll, a field, let's see, the best sex positions for conceiving an employable child. Let's see what else strikes me just here. I'm looking at the list. Bernie Sanders bingo, can you create luxury leftism, how to choose your beliefs quickly, and so on. Win the GOP Senate primary, it's super fun. I really encourage people to get it, and it's not just because I like you guys. It is fun stuff. So, Current Affairs Big Book of Amusements, now available at fine booksellers everywhere and also on Amazon. With that, this must have been fun to put together, right?
It was fun. It was difficult because we had to figure out, these are usually meant to sort of go in between articles and be sort of like an appetizer. And so to put them all together, we had to figure out a good flow for them, figure out where everything kind of fit, because you can really pick up at any point and you just read something and have a really good time with it. But we also wanted it to be fun if you were to go all the way through, because some people are completionists like that, to go all the way through and enjoy every single one in turn.
So it's like curating a dim sum meal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great, and that's how I'm going to describe it from now on.
Okay, good. Have at it. It's all yours. Now, what potentially, even though it was very funny in a dark way, what was potentially perhaps less fun to write was your quiz, your amusement when it comes to anti-Semitism. Are you listening to the community? I got a lot out of this because, among other things, I was raised Jewish, and even though I had a multi-religious, it's complicated. But I was raised Jewish. I had a bar mitzvah, and this whole listening to the community thing has just been driving me absolutely insane. And I think I lost my mind permanently when the answer to the accusations of anti-Semitism against Ilhan Omar was that she needed to get sensitization and anti-Semitism from Chelsea Clinton.
Ooh, was that infuriating or what? Chelsea Clinton, who is notably not Jewish.
Not Jewish.
Not at all.
And Meghan McCain, of course, also
even
not
less Jewish.
Yeah, so what do you do? So you wrote, what was your motivation for writing this, first of all?
Well, as with a lot of the amusements, I end up writing them out of extreme anger. I often will seethe about something for a few days because there's a lot of really horrible things that are going on in the world. And this anti-Semitism blow up is, it's personally very frustrating because I'm Jewish too. And it's just so irritating to see that these non-Jewish rich girls get to speak for us for no particular reason. And it's even frustrating to see someone like AOC responding to a right-wing Jew who responded to her on Twitter about Ilhan Omar, saying, "Oh, well, let's talk to you, let's interview you, we can discuss this." And she's willing to reach out to him to listen to him, but she's not willing to reach out to, the very, very many left-wing Jews who supported Ilhan Omar and didn't agree with what was going on and didn't agree that Ilhan Omar was an anti-Semite. So I find that really fascinating and really frustrating, and like one of the only really maybe healthy, not sure it's healthy, possibly healthy ways that I've found to deal with how angry I am about this stuff is to write something that's pointed and funny and to get out like that dark funniness, like that helps me process how I'm feeling. And I think it helps other people sort of like walk through the absurdity of these situations. Because it is ridiculous that we are talking about anti-Semitism. We're centering Chelsea Clinton and Meghan McCain.
Or it absolutely, I mean, can you imagine that happening to any other minority group in this country where you just say, okay, name somebody, Ryan Seacrest is going to speak for the black community or what. I mean, it's just insane. It's just not going to happen, number one. But number two, and more to the point, when you talked about these right-wing Jews who have been anointed. There was an editor for The Forward who put herself forward. There was a guy that you mentioned. I mean, you're Jewish, I'm Jewish. Was there an election and we missed it or something? Because I don't remember voting for these people as my representatives.
Yeah, and there, the old joke is that you have two Jews, you have three opinions. So
Right.
There's no possible way to get a good Jewish opinion unless you're talking to a lot of people. I think there's a tendency, and I've noticed this in social justice conversations sort of generally, there's a tendency to assume that the person who is the most offended is necessarily the wisest and the person who knows the most about their community. And that is frequently true, but it's not always true. And there's certainly situations when people are disingenuous or they genuinely don't understand, or they have an agenda that is an ideology that's kind of separate from their people. And they're not necessarily on the side of their people. And like, I don't think, as many left-wing Jews agree with me, we don't think that Israel and supporting Israel is necessarily a pro-Jewish stance, and being against Israel is not an anti-Semitic stance.
Right, especially, I mean, I would say under any circumstances, because we're not, defined by that particular aspect of our foreign policy here, but also, especially when you have somebody as hateful as Benjamin Netanyahu running the country. I mean, it's just an odious guy with ties to, proto-fascist governments in Eastern Europe and everything else, and conducting horrendous policies against Palestinian children, as you allude to in your piece in a dark way. The very notion that somehow our religion, you know what it is, Lyta Gold? It's an affirmation of the dual loyalty thing that they all say, that they all accused Ilhan Omar of falsely, which is they're basically saying the way to, the non-Jews in particular, that are out there, the Steny Hoyers and the, Mike Pences and so on, are all saying to you and me, I know how to get to you people. You people are going to love it if I declare unconditional support for Israel, because that's the way you people are. It's both, in my mind, anti-Semitic and confirming that deep down inside they believe that dual loyalty is a thing.
Absolutely. And I mean, AIPAC has helped them believe this and has let them believe this and has really encouraged this and continues to encourage this actually very anti-Semitic idea that Ilhan Omar got into so much trouble for talking about. But that they do round up donors and they do lobby and they do make it very hard for you if you don't support Israel with the extreme ferocity that they want. They actually do make it hard for you to get elected and to get anything done. And that is, it looks a whole lot like an anti-Semitic stereotype. And the fact that they're acting like an anti-Semitic stereotype, I mean, they're doing us all a disservice by behaving in that way.
I'll say they've accomplished one thing though, which they've made me sort of re-up my identification with the Jewish community more than I have in many years. You said, you're a U.S. senator in a moment of irredeemable candor. And then you describe, a fictional, so supposed offending the Jewish community. Who do you talk to talk with the community? If you don't talk to AIPAC, they'll lobby on behalf of your opponent. I mean, not lobby, that's anti-Semitic. And that's a premise, right? This is a group that's on video bragging about how much money they can bring if you play along with them, but that's money and that's Jews, so that's anti-Semitic. So in other words, we can't talk about what they do, which is what they want, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very clever in a lot of ways, and it's hard to know how cynical they're being about it, what they're thinking in their own hearts about this. But yeah, they've figured out a way to weaponize this and to weaponize accusations of anti-Semitism so they can push their agenda, which, I mean, Israel is bombing Gaza right now and killing innocent people, killing children. And this isn't oftentimes when we get into who's offended by what conversations, sometimes they can be about, things that are important, but they aren't super important. They're about like celebrities and things. This is life and death. This is a huge deal. And that they've so cleverly cornered the market on anti-Semitism. So they are the deciders of what anti-Semitism is, and nobody else gets a voice or an opinion. They are allowing atrocities. And that is really the most horrific thing that they could be doing. And also really, in the long term, I think pretty bad for the Jews.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. And we could get, I've said that also, that, allowing this atrocity to continue is not, it's not going to, if your goal, for example, if a person's goal is to ensure the long-term well-being of Israel, that's not the way to do it, because it's losing all world support and all support among younger people. But I don't want to just talk about that, because you also wrote another piece I thought was cool, which was the cancel monster. That was back in February. Why? And you make the point that everybody is afraid of being, well, I don't want to say what you make the point. What was your point in this?
So it's funny because it is a little bit tangentially related in a strange way to the anti-Semitism one. So there's this big fear of cancellation. I refer in the beginning to a Zadie Smith short story that she wrote over the last summer, talking about how terrible it is, this fear of getting canceled. And I wanted to go through and be like, what does it mean to be canceled? And ultimately, what it generally means is nothing. What it means is usually a celebrity gets yelled at on the internet for a while, and nothing happens to them. The only time something does happen is if the person is charged with a crime, like Bill Cosby, or if the other situation where it can be dangerous is in conditions of precarity, like among grad students or among professors or among, in small communities, or if it's like the YA community, that could sometimes be a problem. Even then, it's not really a problem because if you get called out by everybody else, if you get canceled, sometimes your book gets canceled, but then you just reissue it later. And then the very rare instances of like a Justine Sacco, where it's just a random person that everybody on the internet turns on, and then she loses her job and she loses other jobs. It has to be.
She's the one that was tweeting racist things on a flight to South Africa or something. Yeah.
Yeah, she made one joke, which she didn't intend to be racist, but it was racist, and everybody joined in on the fun while she was, making fun of her while she was on the plane. Even Google was tracking her. They set out this when will Justine Sacco land? It was really creepy. But this was like an early instance of cancel culture, and so it kind of gave everybody this impression that cancel culture is super dangerous. And it's really, in the vast majority of cases, it's not, and it's not a big deal. And powerful people don't get hurt by call-outs, and powerful people just frequently don't get called out. The worst case scenario for a lot of these Me Too guys is they had some gigs canceled, but they're like pretty much all back. Louis C.K. is back. Aziz Ansari is back. They're fine. These people end up fine. They're not hurt. It's only when people don't have any power that they get hurt. And so I think if we're going to talk about how cancellation is scary, we need to be talking about power and not about this fear of the mob that is driving everything. And so for example, when we're talking about anti-Semitism, we should be talking about power and what's dangerous. And, Ilhan Omar may be kind of not really stumbling on an anti-Semitic trope, but not really, because how else you can describe AIPAC is a hugely different thing than the armed gunman killing a whole bunch of people in Pittsburgh. That is much scarier, and that's actually dangerous. People actually getting killed, not a person saying something on Twitter.
Right, and yet I think a huge piece of it goes back to the media and what the media covers, and the fact is the media is freaked out about cancel culture. They're constantly running op-eds and doing stories about college students in Irvine didn't like, this or something. They protested this speaker, or they're constantly getting terribly upset if you're Barry Weiss of the New York Times and somebody says something, a bunch of people jump on you on Twitter because they think you wrote something stupid. It's the end of the world, but you still got your job at the New York Times. You still got your salary at the New York Times when a lot of writers are out of work. And yet, so I think that's a big piece of it. They focus on that, but they don't focus on the kinds of vitriol that, and I got a piece, I got myself censored on the Huffington Post, among elsewhere, for writing about the kind of vitriol that actually inspires people to go out and take a gun and kill people. The fact that the killer of the Unitarians in Knoxville, Tennessee had Bill O'Reilly's book on his shelf and Sean Hannity's book and Bernard Goldberg's book on the 100 people who are destroying America, and planned to go down them one by one and kill everybody on that 100-person list. I'm not saying you can't speak. Everybody should have freedom of speech, but the fact that we're not talking about the responsibility not to incite violence. Instead, we're talking about nerds on Twitter or college students somewhere. Is that related to what you're talking about too?
Oh, absolutely. Ben Shapiro. There was I'm forgetting which mass murderer this is. This is very sad. There have been so many. I think it was the incel one in Toronto. But one of the more recent mass murders was inspired by Ben Shapiro, and openly was a fan and openly said things about him. And Ben Shapiro had to very work to sort of scrub that. And he's another guy who's very much on the college kid SJWs are destroying society with their cancel culture stuff. And it's really interesting, the people who scream the most about cancel culture and how bad it is that these kids are just, telling people that they shouldn't talk. They're often the ones who are not themselves getting canceled, who are doing great. Ben Shapiro is doing fine. Jordan Peterson is doing fine. But they are actually inciting violence, and they get away with it. And it's a very interesting defensive move to say, oh, this is just people trying to cancel people and being too sensitive, and they don't have a debate. Well, meanwhile, Ben Shapiro is ducking every possible debate with Nathan, who's been trying to get him for a while. No, and he's even canceled events for it.
No, that's good. I didn't realize he had canceled events, and I guess I would just say if somebody committed an act, God forbid, of violence, and had something I'd written on their desk, I would never get over it. I'd spend the rest of my life trying to atone. And so anyway, we're going to have to leave it there. But before I let you go, Lyta Gold, you want to give us a clue what you're going to write about next, or do we need to just stay tuned?
We've got crazy amusements in every issue. We've got lots of fun stuff every time. Some really, really fun ones for the next issue. I am also going to be writing a piece about feminist utopian literature because I've been reading a lot of it.
Awesome.
Which is great stuff. So hopefully the piece will also be, decent. We'll see.
Well, I'm going to be reading that one for sure because I'm a science fiction freak. But and a fan of feminism, so perfect. So Lyta Gold, Amusements editor for Current Affairs magazine. Great writing, and as always, great to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you as always.